again, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Diary of a Professional. This is Ashley here.
Lou, hi guys.
And we have our lovely guest here, Leslie Jordan Garcia, joining us today. And before we get into all about her and what she does, let's get into our gratitude. So I'll start. I think I am just grateful for heading towards this weekend and getting some time to just relax a little. I don't know. I feel like after the holidays and then trying to ease back into work, it just feels more than usual. Although it's always the same thing, but just trying to ease back into work can just feel so overwhelming sometimes. So I'm happy to have this weekend now to just kind of reset the way I could be more prepared for the work week next week, if that makes sense. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm kind of grateful for that. What about you, Mother?
I'm grateful for... I want to say I am grateful for natural remedies. You know, a couple of us in the house, down and out. And sometimes, I don't really like taking medicine per se, but I'm happy I know of ways that are you put a clove with a garlic with a something, and it just knocks everything out, and it feels natural, especially in today's day where it doesn't feel like, I don't know what they put in the food supply or whatever. And for as long as we can keep produce natural, I am happy to know how to use certain things to get it together. And thankful for that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then tell us, Leslie, what are you grateful for this week?
Well, first, I'm grateful for having this invitation to chat with you ladies, and having ran across your podcast and Instagram page. So I'm grateful for that. I'm also grateful. I'm actually grateful that it's winter. I'm at a place in my life to where I can appreciate the slower time of year and listen to it and don't feel at odds. I don't feel compelled to have springtime or summertime productivity levels in the winter. And I'm okay with that. And I'm grateful that I can be at one with nature this season. This is the first winter. I'm just going to do what it do. And that's it. So I'm grateful for that this year.
Yes.
Ooh, that was good. I feel that wholeheartedly.
I'm going to have to steal that.
Absolutely. So let's get into our topic.
Yes.
I'm so excited. Leslie's here joining us because she is a body image coach, eating disorder recovery on top of that, body image coach. And I don't feel like eating disorders are really talked about that often. And it affects at least 9% of the population worldwide, And I feel that it is undiagnosed with people of color. So I really think we should really bring light to to this conversation. So I just wanted to firstly ask you, Leslie, how did you come about becoming a body image coach?
Through my own eating disorder recovery. So I am a recovered binge eater. And I went through that recovery process before it was technically a full-blown disorder, or in the book of disorders, the diagnostic, the DSM. Mm-hmm. So that's how old I am. I predate that. For a long time, it was bulimia and anorexia and other. That's all there was. And I fell in this category looking a lot like a bulimic, eating large quantities of food at time. But instead of purging with laxatives or vomiting, I purged with exercise. That was my thing. So I would restrict and then I would binge eat at times. So I missed out on a lot of things. And I actually had a friend that reached out to me and said, hey, they're going to be diagnosing this. I think this is you. And she got me hooked up with another coach at that time, and it really helped. It was game changing. It was literally life changing, because I was at the point to where I was feeling kind of hopeless. Like, will I ever be able to accept an invitation to dinner with my friends without feeling like I'm going to lose control in front of other people at this dinner? So instead of saying yes and going and enjoying my friends, I would stay at home and binge, or I'd stay at home and miss out. And that happened a lot. It happened a lot. And so just starting to feel hopeless, like, well, why is everyone else able to seem to have this normal life, or they don't, have all these feelings or anxiety around eating, and controlling their bodies and trying to fit into a professional environment. There was a lot of pressure there to be thin. I can't be white, so I could be as thin as I can be, like trying to fit in to that image. So there was a lot going on, and it just was a time where I felt like my body's only going to get so small. Like I was literally starving, and I was never going to be the size of that society tells me I should have been. Yeah. So it was a dark time, and I'm very fortunate that, I had a coach that helped me overcome some of those underlying issues. So that's how I got into it. I have a master's of public health, and as I worked a lot with people who are diabetic, in my community wellness programming, I saw a lot of those tendencies to binge eat. And especially as I started to see more and more Black people, and largely Black women, there were so many parallels. And as we would talk, and anyway, we'll get into that. But that's really what kind of shifted my career.
Right. Wow. And it's interesting because I feel in particular, the American culture just have this obsession with weight loss. We legit have an obsession with weight loss, and always having to correlate your self-esteem with your body type.
Oh yeah.
And eating disorders is just in general just a disturbance in eating. And how did you, I guess, help people along the way in your coaching with this?
So sure. So I do, obviously I do a lot of one-on-one coaching. And so everyone's kind of different in what works for their body. So something that's really gaining popularity, even though it's been co-opted by this industry that just wants to make money and doesn't really care about your well-being, intuitive eating, or eating as a natural person, knowing when you're hungry and eating to satisfy that hunger, and to where you're full and not uncomfortably full, but also emotionally and spiritually and physically satisfied with what you eat. So I think we're all born that way. Babies eat, they stop when they're not hungry, and we lose touch with those internal cues. And it's because society is an external machine that defines and determines our worth, our value, in so many subtle ways. And so that's basically what I really work with my clients on, is reconnecting with themselves, with their inner wise person, and help them come home to their body. So we do a lot of work around self-acceptance, a lot of work around unpacking anti-fat bias. We do a lot of work about that. And sometimes there's deep-seated trauma that goes along with eating disorders. It becomes a coping tool. It becomes a crutch. It becomes that whoopee, that blanket that you can always turn to. And so I help them develop and practice using tools that help them cope with trauma or other issues in their life, like stress. And for Black women especially, we always have stress. I'm sorry. Being a Black woman is hard. We have stress on our job. Our hair isn't professional enough. I have natural hair. I have locks. That was a thing. I'm this. I'm torn between this. So there's always a lot on us. And, misogynoir is a big thing. And I find that a lot of Black women have that in common. We have that intersection of sexism and racism that's unique to us. And really can set food up to be a soother for us and recurrent. Even if you think you've gotten this one issue, bam, there's another issue. No, she didn't try to touch my hair at work, or no, why I gotta be this, and it's ongoing. And so we see that a lot. I see that a lot working with women, Black women and other women of color, because if you're dark from India, or if you're a dark Latina, that colorism, which is the Siamese twin of racism, is a very real thing.
Mm-hmm. I need to know, because I feel like there are so many stereotypes and myths that come with eating disorders. Like, people automatically assume it's almost like a skinny white girl. Like, they don't think someone who either is like normal size or whether they're overweight or whatever has these things. Can you help dispel some of the myths and things that maybe you even believed, before getting into this field? For sure.
So I come from a family of emotional and binge eaters, and it was never categorized that way, first of all, because, only skinny white girls have eating disorders. Because right. I'm 45, so I remember so vividly as a kid watching the Karen Carpenter story. And if you don't know who Karen Carpenter was, she was a folksy white singer, her and her brother, the Carpenters. And she died from complications of anorexia nervosa. And that was what I know in my family they thought eating disorders were. If you're not wasting away before our eyes, you're not sick. And, and well-meaning, girl, you don't have real problems. My parents, especially my father, who was quite a bit older than my mother. Girl, I went through segregation. I've had dogs turned on me. Girl, you don't even know what a problem was. I'm a veteran and was shot, in a parade, like, by other Americans, like, coming back from Vietnam. You don't have problems. Like, those were the types of things I would hear, and I'm just like, but no, I'm upset. Like, and I didn't really get a lot of the emotional tools that I needed to cope with that. So, for sure, eating disorders can exist in any size, color, shape, body. You can be 400 pounds and be anorexic. You can be, grossly underweight and be still needing to be bulimic. There's binge eating disorder. There is something now we call RFID, another restrictive type of disorder. What I see cropping up more often now is orthorexia, which is this fixation on eating only things that you perceive to be healthy. So, you're, I call it nuts and seeds and leaves. Like, you eat lettuce and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And that hyperfixation is also an eating disorder now. So there are also things like pica. I live in the South. I'm a Southern girl. How many times have we heard as Black women about Black women being pregnant, eating red clay or dirt when they're pregnant? That's a form of eating disorder. That's called pica. I suffered with eating ice. Ooh, when I was pregnant, baby, couldn't nobody crunch ice with me. That's a form of pica. And I learned that it was because I was always anemic when I was pregnant with deficiency. So there's so many different nuances to eating disorders, but basically anyone can develop an eating disorder, and this goes for men as well. And I would also say that in my practice, I have this firm belief that if you've experienced trauma, and I don't mean it has to be like child abuse or spouse abuse, or it doesn't have to be that, even though sometimes it is, but just the trauma of living as a Black person or as a person of color, racism, that's enough trauma to get you. I assume that you have had a traumatic experience when I meet you, and I move from there. And that's a shift. Traditionally, Black bodies are thicker in a lot of areas, in a lot of regions, like geographical regions. We tend to have a different muscle to fat ratio. We have a different bone structure. And often when we go see a doctor, we are not diagnosed with an eating disorder. Even if we describe to them behaviors that should be red flags, we are most likely going to be prescribed weight loss. Because if we come in at a weight over the standard, which is BMI, which is racist and useless, then they tell us to lose weight. And it only makes it worse for us. So being aware of those things and really seeking the help of people, honestly, of color, and there are some groups nowadays where you can do that is so critical, and receiving culturally responsive care is a game changer for us now.
Absolutely, absolutely. I say that because when I see my patients, there are like specific questions I love to ask, and I feel like it kind of goes over people's heads. I usually like to ask, like, oh, like, how do you think of yourself? Like, just randomly, how do you think of yourself? Do you want to gain weight or lose weight? Despite how they meet, like, I was, oh, do you want to gain weight or lose weight? Oh, what makes you feel that way? Why? And I ask those specific questions just to start targeting their relationship with food and how they see themselves with every child or every young adult, call them children, but they're young adults,
Yes.
And I find that there is like with my transgendered patients, they may restrict more with their eating habits, like say if I have a girly who's like maybe 200 pounds, they may not even think of anorexia. They're like, oh, she's not anorexia. I'm like, no, she already has a goal in mind to lose X amount of weight. And she already thinks of herself as X, Y, and Z. We have to start thinking anorexia. You can't just say, oh, well, no, she doesn't qualify. She didn't fit this criteria. And
anorexia is tough because we typically think of starving, but a person who is eating well below, a certain calorie intake that's the beginning of anorexia. It's not about the size of the body; it's about the food and nutrient intake. And I'll say almost all of my clients who've ever come to me, who wanted to lose weight, were probably anorexic at some point. Like they're starving themselves. Like there's this myth that fat people are all lazy and are all just eating, thousands of calories a day. Fat people are some of the most undernourished people I've ever met. Like they're desperately trying to shrink and shapeshift their body beyond genetics. Like they are really, really trying, and it's not because they're not trying. I believe in body diversity, so that's another thing that our society doesn't appreciate. Bodies are just different sizes, they're going to be different sizes, and there's a natural set point theory that I work from a lot. Just your body's going to get to where it wants to be, and that's what it is.
I know, and I try to debunk that as much as I can with my clients. And I definitely wanted to shed light to that. And I'm just curious too, do you get clients that leave like eating disorder rehabs afterwards, so forth? Do you get clients like those who like are in and out of rehab often?
So I don't. I get clients a lot of times that have had maybe long-term residential treatment. Mm-hmm. And then they're able to have tools that keeps them out, even if they need to go for a more rigorous outpatient type of therapy, depending on where they are. I do work in collaborations. Like I'm on a team. Maybe that person, one of my clients, may be with me for like day-to-day practical skills. And then they have a nutritionist or a dietitian that they're working with. Mm-hmm. And then they may also have a therapist that they're working with also to get to some of these deeper seated issues. So I do have clients that come to me as a part of a coordinated care team, mm-hmm. or they're just seeing me. They've progressed long enough and been in recovery long enough that where they just need me for like day-to-day tips. And, we meet weekly. I do a lot of body image, coaching, helping them accept and I like to say, come home to their body. This is the longest relationship any of us is ever going to have is our body. It's been with us. It's going to stay with us. It's the one constant relationship that we have. And so I work a lot about accepting your body, even if you want to change your body. Being able to accept where it is at this point and keep on doing the health promoting behaviors that are necessary for you to be nourished and be energized. And I also really coach from a position of full nourishment, not just a full tummy, but nourished mind and a nourished spirit. I feel like you have to have a holistic approach and touch it, because your body is wherever you go. Like we talk about on your job, it's there. It's at your spiritual place. If you go to church, wherever you worship, wherever you meditate, where it's there. It's in your relationship. It's at your school. It's in your family. It's in your intimate relationships, and especially for people who are in bodies that are changing size. Intimacy becomes a thing that they want to talk about and have to cope with. If their partners are treating them different because their bodies have changed. I see that. I talk to a lot of women postpartum who are going through some body image issues. So you just never know where it can strike. And I just think that being aware that it's normal that bodies change, and it's okay to feel funny about your body changing, as long as you are willing to keep an open mind and really try to get under why you feel that way, or why you feel that your body is such a determinant of your own self-esteem and self-worth.
I love this. I feel like more people, like, it's almost like, how can they reach you? Because it is so holistic. Like, I love how you're naming different practices and disciplines, because it does take all those different components to make it really work and to, hopefully achieve success in these things. But how do you then incorporate the family? Because like you said, I feel like, yes, the individual might be suffering from it, but it is a, community issue, and and in the people that are around you and your environment. How do you tackle that?
It's sometimes challenging with adults. Like, I have a couple of adolescents right now, and so it's easier to bring in, strategies for their parents to work. And it's so funny. One of my adolescents you mentioned, Ashley, is non-binary, and when you're in that discovery stage and really trying to figure out who you are or be whoever you want to be as the mood or you desire, really trying to determine your physical aesthetic is challenging, especially when you're young. And I see a lot of restriction in that, especially if you're tend to gravitate more of a feminine expression. It's a lot of restriction there. So with the family, I do teen counseling, and a lot of times I work with the family members separately. So like if it's one person that I'm treating, if it's their partner or spouse, or if they're young enough and they still live really close to home, maybe working with their home, like their parents, really trying to educate them first about what eating disorders are. There's still so much education that needs to happen, especially in the Black community, like what it is. Sometimes they feel like when people express that they're struggling with an eating disorder, they internalize blame, and it's not necessarily about that. So that is definitely a challenge, working with those family members, but just trying to get them educated about what eating disorders are and the types of conversations and comments that are helpful to that person in recovery, and the types that are not. And a lot of times that's just kind of where I start. We just talked about the holidays, saying things like, baby, you really gonna go back and get a second plate? Like, that's not helpful to someone, to anybody, you know what I'm saying? But we know we have that auntie that will go there, that grandma, that uncle that will go there with you, and really trying to help those families see those comments aren't helpful. And also giving that person in treatment or my client some tools to kind of deal and navigate with that, because, if you can't distance yourself, sometimes that's just really the best thing for a little while, is to put some distance between you and your family if they're going to be in a triggering environment for you. And that sometimes you just, cookie lines, got to put me first.
Yeah, Ashley and I talked about that. Sometimes you got to just.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. Yes, yeah. You have to. You have to, because if you're not well, what are you going to accomplish for your family or for any of the people that are depending on you? Mm-hmm. Eating disorders have one of the highest suicide rates among any mental disorder.
Ooh.
People don't realize that. And it's not just the anorexic starving to themselves. It's literally active suicides have the highest rates, and actually binge eaters lead that. So it's you have to be able to come to a place to where you know that you are worth it, and you're willing to do what needs to be done to make sure that you're well.
And I'm so happy you bring that up, because it's like such a cycle that I have with my patients, where I'm sometimes doing weekly weight checks on them, but then next thing you know, they're having suicidal ideations. Then they end up in the psych floor for some time, and then I have to wait till they're out, and then we have to go back and resume on their eating. It's like they're like in and out of psych, back to me, and I don't think people understand how much they're intertwined with mental health as well. You know, so I'm happy to like shed that light too as well, where it's just really how much we need such collaborative practice to help.
Yes, and I tell people eating disorders is not about food. Mm-hmm. I think that right there is just one thing. If people can listening take away from eating disorders are not about the food. It's not about a willpower. It's not a morality. It's not about that at all. It's just about coping and finding ways to deal with whatever that person is dealing with, whether it's body image, whether it's trauma, whether it's repressed voice. They're in a relationship or in a situation where they can't fully express themselves. That food is something that everyone has to have. And our bodies is the one thing that we own. It's the only thing we own in our life is our bodies. And that's why the bodies take such, the brunt of the disorder, because that's the one thing that I own. It's tough. And it's so sad because people, they're so treatable. They really are treatable. The more I dig into unraveling some of these myths and misbeliefs and misconceptions around eating disorder and work with people who have an open mind and just open to learning facts and respecting them, whether they're in a larger body or in a smaller body, and also respecting their culture, if they're Black, if they are Latina, or respecting that culture and coming together, man, the effectiveness is so much more. It's just success rate is so much higher. And the more we talk about it, I think the better it will be for everybody. Somebody listening, this is going to shed a light. And the more we shed light on this, the fewer places it has to hide. And so they become things that we're talking about.
For sure. It's crazy as you're telling these, stories and cases, because I work in a children's hospital and they have a specific unit for like the eating disorders. And a lot of times, nurses from my unit don't want to go there because they're like, oh my gosh, they're so manipulative in the things that they do. And as you're telling these, facts, I feel like now it's more about control than manipulation. And they are literally like, when they're doing the weigh-ins, like they'll try to, wet themselves or put pennies in their clothes, or if they're in the shower, then they're like running in place to try to like different little things. And it's like, we're putting them almost in this box, and it's like fight or flight. And they're just trying to do what they feel is best for what they have to do. And it's like, it's eye-opening.
It is, because I think sometimes, especially with children, I think parents think that adolescents or children are doing this to them. And that's not what's happening at all. This child views themselves in a certain way, and they are trying to achieve their goal by any means necessary. They're extremely dedicated. And also, I want to say, especially speaking from my own personal experience, my eating disorder, my binging provided comfort for me. It was something I could trust. I knew I was going to feel the way I wanted to feel in that. So in that way, my eating disorder served me. It was something that I won't say I was happy to have it, but it definitely served a purpose for me for a long time. And it wasn't until it no longer served that purpose that I was able to receive the help that I needed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I guess meeting you at that point where it was like enough was enough.
Yeah.
I know of some of like, certain, I guess side effects, if you will, whether it's, you don't have your period, whether it's malabsorption. What are some of the things, or maybe things that people should look for if it's whether their child is someone that they know, to be like, hold on, they might have something,
So that really gets nuanced because it so many things. So I would say one of the biggest things I would warn people to look for is if that person is engaging in a lot of body surveillance. Is that person always looking in the mirror, always wanting to weigh themselves, always wanting to like try on like literally like the skinniest pair of jeans that doesn't have any stretch and to see if they can fit them. That constant body checking, pinching. You remember Special K, that cereal, can't pinch an inch, like those type of things. Are they trying to pinch a roll of fat, or are they those type of behaviors? Those are probably more telling and easy to spot, those right off. Also, if you're in a home with like a child or adolescent, really watching, honestly, their food intake and output. Like, are they exercising a lot? Like, it's kind of tough. Like, if you have a child that's a gymnast, right, and they're going to these long practices, but they're not ever hungry, that's something you should be concerned about because they're putting out that energy. Their body is wanting some replenishment. Or, nibbling, this barely eating anything all the time. Once in a while, that's normal, especially for children. Their taste change, their moods change, but if they're never eating or always just nibbling and seems like to barely be getting by, that's a sign to look for. Also the moods, like honestly with adults, oh man, when we all have heard the word now, hangry. Please trust me, hangry is a real thing. That person is not eating enough food. Like, I'm sorry, like you're not eating enough food. And if you're mad because you missed lunch and they're like, oh, I skipped breakfast. Oh, I can't wait till I get to lunch. And then they eat a lunch, that's okay. But if they go to lunch and then they try to come out with that little yo play and and think that's 6 saltines and call that lunch. No, this person is restricting, and I find that people restrict really well at work. They want to fit in. They don't want to seem to be an overeater or hide their binge. Like, binging is very private. You're not going to hardly witness that. It's going to be this constant ongoing restriction, especially in my case that eating the proper lunch, and all I'm thinking about when I get home is what I have planned to eat, at home. Some of those things, always talking about food or never wanting to talk about food. Those are some things, people should be able to, oh yeah, I had this and it was really good and enjoy and move on, in a normal relationship with food or a healthy relationship with food. But if they're constantly fixated on food, what you eat, what did you have? How did you cook it? Every time with everything was like, I sliced this apple this way, like if it's not that deep, it shouldn't be that deep,
Man.
Exactly.
So many good nuggets. I love it.
And I mean, honestly, the pandemic really changed a lot of the way we relate to food. When people were at home for, a year and a half, 2 years, and, maybe not moving as much, and food really became a soother, a comfort, a joy. Everything was wrapped up in it because, how many baking videos that people start all of a sudden never, all those things start cropping up because it was something that we had. And some of those people were able just to move right into, back to a different type of lifestyle or the previous lifestyle. But some of us really that time exacerbated or shifted disordered eating into a full-blown eating disorder. And so it's difficult. It's tough to want to say something to somebody, and the body is very personal, and still be concerned. But yes, with adolescents, you have to kind of get in their business a little bit. They're still growing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
That's just what it is. You got to get in their business.
You gotta get in their business.
You just got to
Yeah.
get in their business. I agree. So, do you have any advice to anyone who is going through any struggles with food, dealing with any eating disorders right now? Do you have any advice for them? And then, of course, where can they find you?
Yes. So, advice. That's so, my best advice is honestly to look within. Like, if you are relying on society or someone outside of yourself or some situation outside of yourself to validate your self-worth, I think that right there is enough to seek help. You should be able to generate and maintain, decent self-esteem, self-worth, because it's your birthright. You are worthy by virtue of existence. So I just don't think that it's the days of looking to society to say, oh, you're pretty or you're pretty enough or those are over. That comes from within yourself. And if you struggle to do that for yourself, then I think that you should talk to somebody. And as for me personally, I am found on Instagram. I am at eatfree.livefierce on Instagram. And then my website is Leslie Jordan Wellness. And I would love to talk to you. And if I'm not a match, I know people. I'm connected with Diversified Dietetics, which is a group of dietitians, Black women, women of color, specifically for that, so that you have some options. I'm a member of a professional community of therapists, dietitians, all kinds of different eating disorder specialists. So there is good help. I do virtual. I'm on the phone. I'm local in Austin, but thank you, Internet. I will work with you, however it needs to be worked, because I just feel that we need to be able to do that for ourselves, and we need to be able to do that for our community, and really put the good education out there. Like you said, I'm so grateful to you ladies for shining a light on this, because it's still just not talked about, because we still don't believe, our culture, the thick culture, right? We're torn in between being thick, but then don't be too thick, like that. So we're pulled not just between this idea of upholding what the dominant culture says we should look like. Then we have our subculture saying what we should look like. It's like slim down, but get this BBL, or no waist and big tit. It's like we really care, are in the middle of that. So I think the more you see us talking about it and people that look like us, the more beneficial it will be. So.
I love that, yes, because that body image of, like, you're not like a real Black girl if you don't have a booty or this, or you're too skinny, but we could have a whole conversation, but I just love the way you have taken what you've been through, and personally, and are able to give back in a way, to reach so many who suffer, men and women, like you said, and we thank you for coming on.
Thank you again for having me.
Amazing.
So I hope you all enjoyed this episode as much as we did.
Yeah.
Definitely comment, like, subscribe. We would love to hear from you all. Definitely check out Leslie's page and her podcast, by the way, too, as well. She got some episodes there, too.
I do. I need to get back to it. I've been too busy doing conferences for some reason. Like, people come speak, and I'm like, okay, I need to do that.
You got the goods. People need to hear what you have to say, honey.
Yeah, we need you.
Very blessed.
We need your voice. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, everyone, till next time, thank you.